My name's Joe.
And I'm Jess, and we're here from Cutting Class Podcast, a humorous, hysterical outlook. So today, we have an unusual situation for you guys. We have our very first podcast crossover.
It's 10 years in the making.
It's the most ambitious crossover of podcasts ever made. So today, we're going to be talking with the Omni Geeks, a family-friendly discussion of comic books and geek chic from around the world. They're going to be talking to us.
What a great word.
They're going to be talking to us about the Avengers Infinity War. And so we're going to kind of have a little mix up here. Normally we talk to you guys about history, but we're going to talk to you about movie history today.
And, you know, we'd said before that we were, I think, Jess, you actually suggested this to me. We were just talking on the phone one night, and you said, you guys need to do a history of comic book movies. And I immediately wrote it down, and we've got it in the pipeline ready to hit the airwaves. But
Well, that'd be great.
This seemed like the perfect opportunity to do the biggest crossover in our podcast's history.
Absolutely.
Ours, too, is actually the first time we've ever tried to get somebody else to talk to us on a podcast.
That's the first time anyone's accepted that.
Well, we're glad to be the ones, whether it was your last choice or first choice. We're just glad to do it.
Let's call it a choice.
Yeah, a choice. We are a choice.
So as we start off this show today, I think we should start off a little bit with some of the predictions for the Avengers Infinity War. And to be fair, we have all seen it at this point, but I asked us to kind of sit down and think about what you think might happen. So no cheating. What you think you might see in the Avengers Infinity War before you see it.
I guess now we also need to say, if you're listening, guys, spoiler alert.
Yes.
There's going to be a lot of spoilers in this show, so if you haven't seen the film, stop listening to us.
I've said that before. I am not talented enough to decide what might be a spoiler and what might not for some people. So just understand I'm probably going to spoil.
Yeah, exactly.
I kind of feel like at this point, it's pointless. Everybody should have seen it by the time they hear this Sunday night and on Wednesday. You're behind the game.
For sure.
Yeah, so let's go through some of our predictions. I know I think I opened my big mouth first, and I went out with the easy softball prediction the other night on Twitter, and I said that I figured the Vision would fall victim to Thanos when Thanos takes the stone from his head. And I picked an easy one, and it looks like, as of now, I was right.
My predictions came out. I actually had 4 that I wanted to throw out there.
Dude, you've always got to one-up me.
I do. 3 times the amount. Or 4 even. Now, the first one that I want to throw out to you guys is that I think that we're going to see in Avengers Infinity War the conclusion of the love story between Hulk and the Widow. I think that was going to be one of the things that they're going to show up here, and so I'm expected to see that one. 2, I think that we will see specifically Iron Man die. I think that he is kind of the, not shooting anything, out of left field here. That seems to be the predictable, safe choice. So I think we'll see Iron Man die in this film. And I think we will also see a lot of other major characters die in some sort of shocking way. But my prediction is, and they can only do this one time, but you'll have, the Time Stone undo some shocking death or deaths in this film. And finally, I think we're going to have a cameo of an hitherto unseen Marvel hero in this film. I don't know who it may be. Maybe it'll be Captain Marvel. Maybe it'll be someone from out of left field. But I think we may see some character pop in and the crowd will go nuts. You guys have any predictions over there?
You were exactly right, Jess, in that I might have stolen a couple of your predictions.
Yeah. No, don't let him take credit for everything. He's like the Donald Trump here saying that he fixed Korea.
Right. All of that's because of him. So that I was just listening to his predictions. And of course, he kind of commented on mine and said, I was going to say that. But, I thought that we would get, obviously, some new characters that had not been seen yet. In the back of my mind, I was thinking Captain Marvel, something like that. And we'll see in our discussion how close or not I was to that. But I, too, having, of course, read the story in the comics, I was kind of looking forward to Thanos just coming in, wrecking shop, and then obviously some things are going to have to be reset for the universe to be back to normal. And part of the reason that I predicted that was the fact that Ant-Man and the Wasp is coming out after Infinity War.
Mm-hmm. And
I thought, well, something's got to happen between there to make that a halfway normal world for them to show that movie.
Right.
Yeah, this kind of, Nathan and I had that discussion before, and that kind of led into what I said about it. And I've read the comics, and I kind of base everything on that. My prediction was that everybody dies, almost. In the comics, it was Nebula, his granddaughter in the comics, that actually ends up saving the day, so to speak.
Okay, cool.
And so that's kind of, I thought it would be, again, Thanos' hubris that ended up getting the best of him. And that was kind of where I tweeted that the other day, and I can't find it. Nathan, did you delete my tweet?
It was on there because I looked earlier and saw it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it should still be there.
And I think this would be a good time for Joe and I to point out that we have not read the comics. So we're both kind of coming at this from a little bit of a different background. We are the Marvel Cinematic Universe losers. And you guys are the old school. You've got the books. You know what's going to happen here. So we'll get a little bit of both of the best discussions.
Yeah. Well, something that Nathan and I have said before is that you have to, and it's the case with the Marvel Cinematic Universe as well as the Fox stuff and the Sony things too. You have to look at it as you can use the comic books as a source material to a degree, but you have to understand that this is a completely different animal.
Right.
So you can't go at it expecting everything to be verbatim.
Well, in most every movie they've done, especially with like Age of Ultron and all of those, the Civil War, the comic storylines for those movies. The comic storyline is so much more involved, so much more drawn out. Obviously, there's characters in those storylines in the comics that they did not have the rights to for the films. So I'm hoping moving forward that this Fox deal goes ahead and goes through. They get the X-Men back, the Fantastic Four, and we get to see some more crossovers going into the next phase.
Oh man, they're going to try.
They're
going
to
to
have to do something. I don't know what they're going to do to top this movie.
Yeah. Because isn't Wolverine a pretty prominent character in the Infinity War books?
It's not as much as some other characters.
In Civil War, well, Age of Ultron was Wolverine and Sue Storm was pretty main characters in Age of Ultron.
Okay. As far as the Infinity Gauntlet series, he was there, but I don't remember him being a very significant figure.
Okay.
The main ones from the comic series, Infinity Gauntlet, Infinity War, that we hadn't seen yet, is probably Silver Surfer,
right,
and Adam Warlock.
Yeah.
But we know that Adam Warlock's cooking because wasn't he teased in Guardians Volume 2?
He was.
Okay, so we know that one's at some point going to make an appearance, and of course we know that I think next March is going to be the Captain Marvel film.
Right.
And then after that will be the second Infinity War.
Yeah, the Avengers 4.
Yeah, and I'm interested in that because, originally they called it Infinity War Part 1, Infinity War Part 2, and they've changed that now. The other one's just being referred to as Avengers 4.
Okay.
So they're not doing just Part 1 and Part 2 again. I know that I love the way this movie ended up, in that it's truly just a cliffhanger going into the next episode.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
It's not like I would have been disappointed if the whole fight would have been wrapped up and they ended up defeating Thanos in one movie.
And I actually went in last night thinking that they had not done a 2-part film. I guess I got my information mixed up. I was trying not to look up stuff about it, but I was under the impression that the story would be concluded. So we got about 2 hours in. I was like, oh, wait, there's no way they're going to finish this up.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, if you want to be honest about it, it was concluded.
Yeah.
Right, yeah.
It was done.
Yeah.
Thanos wins.
I was going to say, if there's a way that you wanted to not spoil it, you could say that the title is probably the most aptly named Avengers title up to this point. It was a war.
Right.
Even more so than even Civil War.
And it might go on for infinity. Who knows how long they're going to drag this thing out.
Depends on how long people keep paying.
as long as they can keep raking it in for the movie tickets, it'll
Oh, and
keep
they
going.
will. Good grief! In Tupelo, they had the 3D showings and the regular standard definition showings, and they were sold out.
Right.
Yeah.
I saw it about 9:00 last night, and there was one seat left, and I grabbed it.
I mean, our theater was packed. I mean, we did the deal where you can reserve your seat, and I mean, if we hadn't, I wouldn't have wanted to go and fight for 2 seats in the middle to find. I would have just walked away and come back another time.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, let's start off. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, you're talking about the packed theaters, and we were talking just a bit ago before we started recording, is that one of the coolest ways to see a movie is in a packed theater full of people who are clapping and cheering and laughing at things, and like everybody's involved in what's going on the screen, and that just makes the movie that much better when you're in that atmosphere.
Yeah, and I gotta say, I talked to a couple students. We have some students who listen to our show, and they were like, "Well, I'll just stream it once it's online, illegally, or I'll get it from Redbox." And I'm like, guys,
oh, it's terrible.
A big part of a film like this is being in that atmosphere. Like, don't sell yourself short and watch this on your phone. Okay, you need a big screen for this kind of event.
And in particular, and we can talk about this later when we talk about some of the events in the movie. There was one in particular that stood out to me because I literally could not hear what was happening in the film. There was a crowd reaction that was so guttural to something that happened that it was almost laughable, and I thought that we were getting trolled for a second.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, Nathan was talking about the crowd reaction. There was a lady, and since we've already said spoilers, she was sitting next to me. And she was talking the whole time, chirping. Her son was there, and he was probably 6 or 7, which was it was fantastic. And she wouldn't shut up. The kid was fine the whole time. The kid was fine. He was sitting there watching the movie, and she wouldn't stop talking. And since spoilers have already been said, when the Red Skull showed up, I was shocked. I was not expecting to see the Red Skull.
Neither was I.
But and I kid you not when I say that she yelled out, "Hey, it's Skeletor!" And I looked over. I said, "No, that's the Red Skull." And she's like, "Oh, yeah." I wanted to tell her, "Now shut up." But,
you should have done it in your voice too. You should be like, "No, you boob, that's the Red Skull."
So let's jump in here really quick first, and I wanted to just knock it out here at the beginning. In maybe let's just say about a sentence. I'm going to ask each one of you guys, did you like the film? Let's start off with Nate.
I thoroughly enjoyed this film. I think I mentioned before that it felt like I was reading a comic book.
Okay.
Now, the other movies feel like really well put together comic book movies, but I was so glad to see that the plot of this movie wasn't simply Thanos comes to New York, we have a little fight, and then it's over. Like the first Avengers. Okay, it's just he attacks New York, and I was so glad to see that it was happening all over the universe. And I understand why they split the different characters up into their own little side quests or whatever. I think they handled that very well as far as this many actors and actresses in one film.
Yeah.
But I was just glad to see that the Marvel Cinematic Universe is finally a universe. It's not just, this city is being attacked.
Right. Yeah, cool.
But yeah, I thoroughly enjoyed the movie. I'm going to see it again as soon as I can.
Cool. Joe, did you like the film?
In one sentence, I will say, this is a sentence our students would give us on an essay.
Yeah.
Yes. I enjoyed the film.
Very succinct.
And I just realized that I completely failed because I went way more than once.
Did not.
That's okay. That's also like our students. You give them clear instructions and they just ignore them. So let's see. Let's see if John can help us out.
All right, John, help us out. Did you like the film in one sentence?
Well, Joe. Well, first off, Joe, you got about 4 extra words out of your students than they can typically get out of mine. So anything past it's like. No, I don't know. Digging.
That's called value.
Okay, that was your sentence. Good job.
Okay.
To answer the question, absolutely fantastic film.
Okay, cool.
Absolutely.
So now we got to turn it on Jess.
Okay. I enjoyed the experience, but I don't know that I will enjoy it in the future.
Ooh, nuanced as always.
I know. I have to be the
Okay.
negative Nancy, I guess.
So then should we start our discussion with the things that we didn't like about it, and then we'll end on the positives?
Yeah, let's do that, because I do like to end on a more positive note. So yeah.
Okay, so that was all the things we didn't like about it. Now let's move on.
Joe, do you have anything that jumped out at you that you had an issue with?
Yeah, I will say, and just off the top of my head, and also I'm going to preface this with, I have a horrendous memory
Okay.
that, and I know that this is part of a larger story that they're telling, but it still frustrates me because I have to wait another year to see how this pans out. I saw a whole lot of Bruce Banner in this movie, but I'm not paying to see Mark Ruffalo's sexy face. I want to see my big green boyfriend. I love the Hulk, and so I was really bummed out that we only got to see proper Hulk in the opening scene. That would be, right now, probably my main complaint was I was waiting for him to Hulk out of the Hulk armor.
Yeah.
And I was thinking, dude, this is going to be awesome when he breaks out of that shell. And sadly, Hulk was like a teenager, was like, nope, not going to do it.
I thought we were going to have a really cool moment where he's literally like busting out of the armor, but it's still on his body.
Yeah.
And so he's like pummeling that guy wearing the Hulk Buster suit.
So that's my first thing that I was a little disappointed with.
I was kind of confused with the story arc with the Hulk. It seemed to me that they took the Hulk, this unstoppable, brute force, and they turned him into a wimp. He gets his butt kicked by Thanos one time, and then he seems, reluctant to show up the rest of the film. And I know they're building to like here comes the Hulk moment, but it seemed to me, you've got Black Widow down there, this woman who weighs like 120 pounds, and she's going to be fighting these guys, but the Hulk won't? That seemed kind of weird.
Can I offer a rebuttal to that?
Oh, of course, yeah.
All right. The thing that I have to keep in mind, and I thought about this as I was, I spent about 20 minutes sitting in my car, not doing anything, just trying to process the film after it was over.
You must have looked like a crazy person.
Well, that's not unusual. For me,
Looking at
What do
your
you
hands.
mean looked like?
Yeah, that's not unusual. But anyway, my rebuttal to that is that you have to remember where the Hulk has been for the past few years.
Okay.
He was on this planet, and he was the guy on this planet, and everybody that showed up, he was beating them.
Yeah.
Right?
Spoilers for Thor Ragnarok.
Well, it's too
by
late. If we're spoiling this movie, then it's, if you're not caught up on Ragnarok. But anyway, the fact is that he'd been beating everybody. And you have to remember that the Hulk's mentality is he's somewhere around a 4 or 5, maybe 3-year-old kid, right? So and then he had his rear end handed to him by Thanos. And it wasn't even pretty. And so he's going to go hide in his closet, and he's going to stay there. So is he a wimp compared to Thanos? Yeah. But you have to remember his mindset as well.
Sure.
And that's just my 2 cents on it.
Well, and Joe, I have to agree with you. Like I was so waiting for the Hulk to bust out of the Hulk Buster.
Mm-hmm.
Just throw Veronica off and then go to town. I couldn't believe that didn't happen, because it seems like the perfect plot point to be like, okay, let's save it, and then just explode.
Right, yeah.
Right? And in that final battle, that would have been the perfect thing. Okay, you expect him to finally just, all right, this is it. Here's the point. You kind of get that when Thor shows up out of nowhere.
Now, that scene was awesome.
Yeah.
And that was an audible, like everybody just cheered. And like you're talking about, that guttural reaction to Thor showing up and wiping out an entire hillside. That was amazing to see in that theater with that crowd.
I also think, too, that because we do all know that this is, obviously, the Hulk is still around, and that we're going to see him, at the very least, in the next Avengers film. So the big thing is, of course, going to be how do they bring back the Hulk? Because obviously they're going to, and it feels like, they've got some big plans for him. I guess the danger now is they have to come up with something really awesome.
Yeah.
Because now we've had to wait an additional year to get it.
Well, and if the events of Infinity War didn't cause him to come out, that being in the about to die in that last battle. If that didn't cause the Hulk to come on out, then you're right. It's going to have to be something spectacular for him to just say, all right, here I am.
And I'm going to go ahead and throw out my prediction that you will see Natasha Romanoff in danger, and that may bring out the Hulk in part 2.
And maybe we'll start to see some of the different colored Hulks. Maybe we'll get a gray Hulk or a red Hulk or something like that.
Maybe.
So who knows? Let's see what else, if there was anything else that stuck out that we didn't like off the bat.
Yeah, what about you guys? Did you have anything that you jumped out to you that you were less than completely satisfied with?
You want to go?
I'll just say I was telling John a little earlier, the one thing I wish had been different is all of the heroes that did die at the end of the film. I wish, and I guess this is kind of morbid to say, but
you wish they were dead.
I wish that Thanos had wrecked them individually. Like I wish that the way they died would have been like what Tony Stark almost went through,
right? Like
or what the Vision did, like, and that was such a cool part where, Scarlet Witch destroys the stone and basically sacrifices Vision. And then Thanos just kind of undoes time and goes and takes the stone anyway. And then, like, I knew he was going to be able to do that because he had the time stone. But I guess seeing people just kind of float away into the wind, I know that that's Thanos having all the Infinity Stones and snapping his fingers and doing away with half the life in the universe. I know what's going on there, but I would have liked to have seen, like, some serious butt kicking by Thanos.
Yeah, and you can't deny
when it comes to the theater, the heroes.
Like in that opening scene where he, when he chokes Loki, and I'm gonna put in quotes, to death. That scene, that carries a little bit of weight, and it may not be the weight that they think it carries because Loki's done this before. But
right.
It's like when you see sort of a personal death, and you see Thanos. He plays it off in the film like he's doing it out of mercy, but you can tell that he enjoys his power.
Yeah,
and it just brings that little bit more malevolence to it. And like after he takes the stone from the Vision, he just tosses the body. Yeah, you don't get that with all the other heroes. So I get what you mean. Where it can be a little bit of a letdown. Like, man, I want to see him break someone in half.
And I've heard people say that when Spider-Man, floats away into the wind, there's a little bit of emotion there because you can tell that, like, he's a kid. He's really in over his head, and he's scared for what's happening, and he's telling Mr. Stark, I don't want to go, or I don't want to die. I don't want to do this. And there's a little bit of emotion there, but he's really the only one that you feel anything for when they're just floating away.
I think I would have had the same reaction as Nick Fury.
See, I got two things. First off, a little bit of emotion in that scene, I think, is an understatement. I felt like that was the most emotionally, like, powerful moment of the entire film, if you ask me.
When Peter is down.
Yeah, I thought it was fantastic. I got chills.
Yeah, I thought that, like I said, he's the only one of the ones that just floated away. He's the only one that there was any weight to. And that was the perfect scene. He's right there with Stark. That's his mentor. And you can tell that it's just tearing Tony Stark apart. And, there, like you said, there's some weight there. But everybody else is just kind of, oh no, and then just float away.
I think I know what you mean, though. Like, because one of the criticisms that I had that I was going to throw out is that in the way that they kill those characters, right? Quote unquote kill. When, the first one's kind of shocking, where you have Bucky kind of float away, and you're like, oh my gosh, this is terrible. But then they start killing off characters like Black Panther and then Tom Holland, and you're like, oh my gosh, oh wait, there's no way these guys are going to
start killing off all the people that have sequels in the works.
Right. Yeah. So as I was watching it, I'm sitting there thinking, this looks really bad, but there's no way this can last. So I think what you were saying earlier of having Thanos just annihilate these people would have been more convincing that these people are permanently gone.
I think that kind of leads maybe to my main issue with the film is that because Disney does this really great job of letting everybody know what movies are coming out. We can't put a lot of weight into any of it.
Yeah.
And I agree with Nathan in the fact that Peter's floating away. For whatever reason, it took him about 30 seconds longer to float away than everybody else.
Exactly. I think it knew it was a kid. It was like, should I kill this kid? It was like, yeah, I guess I will.
Yeah. I mean, everybody else, it just kind of Drax. He just disappears, and I think was it Mantis was the first one that she just kind of floated away, and then it takes Peter a minute and a half to disappear, and he has a whole conversation before it happens. But my thing is that because we're made aware ahead of time about the events, or not so much the events, but like the movie events that we are to expect in the future, there's not a whole lot of weight put into it. And if
well, and that's when we were in the theater, when Black Panther floated away, there were people in our theater like, oh no, I can't believe they killed Black Panther, and I'm like, he's already got a sequel lined up. It's going to be fine.
Right. There's no way. And and even if you didn't know the movies that were slated to come for the next, however many millennia that they've got them planned out, the fact that one with Black Panther, like you said, being as massive of a hit as it was, they're not going to literally burn that up in ash in the very next film that he appears in. Right. And then after all of the contortions they had to go through to get Spider-Man, there's no way that they're going to do Homecoming and then Infinity War and then just off he goes. And that's taking into account that we also know that there is going to be another Spider-Man film. Yeah. So we know that it's too lucrative. There's no way they're going to just vaporize all those characters.
And, this is how films are. I mean, we all know that the good guys will win in the end.
Yeah.
A couple characters may go, but we know in the end the good guys will win. But I think it's a real fair criticism to say, like, okay, the second that I stopped being concerned about those guys is the second Black Panther went away. Because, as you guys are saying, we know there's sequels coming. Why do I need to worry?
Right.
And this also...
Well, and we know... Sorry. We know because of the comics, because it's not going to be the exact same storyline, but we know what happens, and that, pretty much complete devastation, and then it all has to be reset.
Yeah, exactly. And it has to.
We know that the reset is coming.
Right. And I was thinking, too, now this is for a different film, but this same issue of knowing too much ahead, this is also... There's a shot in the trailer that they keep showing for Solo of Chewie hanging precariously off of a ship, and Han is like grabbing onto him, and they're heading into the rocks, and it looks like Chewie's gonna get smashed on the rocks, and
it's literally a scene stolen from
what's going to happen
Crusade.
there.
Yeah, it's like the tank scene from Last Crusade, and I remember turning to Jess when I saw that, and I was like, Jess, do you think Chewie's gonna make it? Because it's like I get it. You want to have a little fun and excitement in your film, but like there is no suspense because we know that Chewie makes it, unless they're going to pull one of these like it's actually Lumpy and it's not Chewie, and then we have a 30-minute scene of a Wookiee funeral that has no subtitles.
Yeah. Or it could be his twin brother.
That would be a very emotional scene.
Yeah.
I think they need to. I don't need to cut that out. Leave the Wookiee funeral in.
Leave the Wookiees in.
I'll tell you one thing I wanted to see more of. I wanted to see a little more of
Captain America's big.
Yeah.
Dude, he looked great.
I wanted to see Thanos use the Reality Stone more. He used it one time, and it was really cool and really kind of mind-bending, but he didn't really use it much beyond that.
Well, and I guess that's one of the things is when, especially now, there's no telling what we could see in the next movie. Now is that he has all of the stones. He can use any one or any few or all of them to have an effect on whoever's facing him. But the Mind Stone, I think it is, that allows him to cause all the good guys to start arguing and things like that. Mm-hmm. And then the reality one is like when in the movie when Gamora just stabs him in the throat, and I'm like, okay, roll credits.
Yeah.
And then I knew as soon as she did that, I'm like, yeah, this is the reality, Jim. But it was cool to see, and it's especially when she's telling Star-Lord, you promised you would kill me, basically, and he finally musters up the courage to do it and pulls the trigger, and it's Bubbles. Yeah. I mean, that was awesome.
Didn't that happen twice, though?
Yeah, it was Bubbles twice.
Yeah, which I was a little disappointed the second time I saw.
Yeah,
it seemed to be his go-to, like any dangerous weapon would turn to Bubbles.
Mm-hmm. In that same vein of what John's saying, I had one criticism that I said to Joe that night was that it seemed like the writers used the exact same plot point twice of, hey, here are these two characters that love each other, and, oh, kill me when things get bad.
Yeah.
They do it with Gamora and with Star-Lord, and then they go ahead and they do it with
Vision and Wanda.
Vision and Wanda, and they're almost literally back-to-back scenes. And, I remember sitting there thinking, oh, man, we just watched this with different characters.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
right.
I agree.
And then I suppose, too, to get in another one, because really I'm kind of running out of negative things at the moment. One more thing, and I'm not a massive Vision fan, but I know Jess and I talked about this, is in the similar vein of my disappointment over not seeing the Incredible Hulk proper in this film was, for fans of the Vision, he really just gets beaten to death, like left, right, and center. He doesn't really have a triumphant moment at all where he's like a force to be reckoned with. He's like stabbed through the back and more or less just gets his butt handed to him a couple of times, and then he gets killed. Yeah,
it's 2 hours of watching Vision get his butt kicked by like lieutenants. I don't know
if the initial stab, if he's just like injured throughout the rest of the film and not his full self.
Yeah.
But when you take him from Age of Ultron,
right, where he's flying around blasting things,
it's a completely different character. Yeah.
Yeah, that seemed to me kind of odd that, here he is, he saves the day in Ultron, like you're saying, no time flat, but then he can't take one of Thanos' goons.
Yeah, and Black Widow can.
Yeah.
Take the same one.
It just seemed crazy.
Yeah. That's what we were talking about earlier, is Vision's one of the most powerful members of the team. He gets thrashed, and then Black Widow shows up and holds her own against the same enemy.
Yeah.
And we're like, well, who is she? What are her powers anyway? We know that she's had some training and that she's been in certain situations, but what special power does she have other than her particular training?
It's just that ScarJo razzle dazzle, man. She's just the best.
Well, and while we're on the topic,
it may be the constant hair color changes that's really keeping her fresh.
You done it. You did it, man. I had to throw down on this. Why on earth did they change her hair color? There is no explanation for it. There's no need for it. And quite frankly, I'm just disappointed. I like a redheaded Scarlett Johansson. I don't see the point in making her blonde for this film.
This is getting dangerously close to patriarchy. We're going to lose a lot of subscribers.
I got to say.
I think they did it because those characters are supposed to be in hiding.
Oh, she's so
different.
That
said, maybe. I mean, that's the theory behind it.
But you go back to the Winter Soldier, and she's gone from red, full-bodied curls, and in the Winter Soldier, it's been straightened.
Yeah.
She looks like a completely different person.
Well, she's a spy. She's supposed to look different.
Maybe that's the point.
What they need to do is, if they really wanted to pull off a convincing Black Widow spy, is they should have had a completely different actor, like Tom Cruise, show up and be like, "I'm Black Widow." I had some serious surgery done so that I could go undercover, and then it would just. Right. Can you imagine someone CG's his face over all of her moves throughout the entire film? There's a spy for you.
Somebody get on that right now.
I had my one big complaint that I have to throw out here. I had one thing in the film that as I was watching it, it was so bad that I was taken out of the film. And normally I don't have moments like that during films, but this was one of the things, and I guess it's a personal gripe for me, but it's one of the things in this film, and there's only really one scene that I thought was so bad that I was just like, I was mad as I was watching it. And I know I talked to Joe about this last night, but it's something that movies do multiple times, and they did it in this film too.
Oh, yeah.
And it's so freaking dumb. And the scene is in Wakanda as the aliens are charging the bubble dome. it's the stupidest thing I've ever seen. And here's why. Here's why this is a bad scene. So Black Panther tells them, okay, we're going to open up the floodgates, right? We're going to open up a part of the shield, and they'll charge us. That way they don't come around us. Okay, well, that makes sense. His legions are out there in, like, you know, square formations, and they've got these, like, you know, blanket phalanxes going on, and they got all these guys with spears, and it's really cool looking, right? And then they open up this shield, and they're like 400 yards away from the gap. And so these things start rushing through and spreading out. Like, this would be such a cool moment for them to, you know, pull a Hot Gates of Thermopylae, get up there on the shield, let them push in, and have this really cool actual kind of phalanx fight thing going on. But they don't do that. Mm-hmm. They open up the floodgates, and everybody just goes herpaderp, drops their shield, and starts sprinting into a field to fight.
And you would think that if anybody knew better than to do that, it would be Captain America, who's right up front.
Yeah. Right, and who's literally done this before in World War II.
And it's funny, Captain America and Black Panther take off sprinting and just leave everybody in the dust. Like, the rest of the army is 100 yards behind those two. And they rush headlong because they're 10 times faster than everybody else.
Well, and the point of them doing opening the floodgates was they even said they're trying to get in across the circumference of the dome. We've got to make sure they can't encircle us. And so then they open part of it, leaving more than a football field in between them so that literally they can scatter throughout all of Wakanda. It's like we were talking about how, of course, this was me, you know, being a Hulk fanboy again, is maybe that could have been your moment when Bruce hulks out. You put him as the first line of defense. You've got War Machine and the Falcon as air support, bombing these things from above, and then you've got the phalanxes, and you got to make these creatures like really push back into Wakanda before it all goes to hell.
And I mean, you get the cool sprint, a much cooler scene.
Yeah, you get the cool sprint scenes, but you could have had an even cooler, just true like unstoppable force and immovable objects type scenario too.
Mm-hmm. Well, and you know, the scenario that you're describing has been so well thought out that you start to find. I'm the same way with any movie I'm watching. The first time I watch it, I'm trying intentionally not to think too critically because I'll start picking things out and not even enjoy the movie. So anytime I'm watching a movie for the first time, I'm just watching the action on screen, and then I'll always go back later and think, well, this should have been different, or this would have been better if it were, you know, done that way. But you're right that the idea that there's so much space between the two armies, you have one army in perfect formation and the other army scurrying like bugs all over the place. Yeah. It just doesn't match up.
Mm-hmm. And I was telling Joe, this is the same thing that they did in the movie 300. You know, they literally have like 2 minutes of actual sort of phalanx fighting until, you know, you have Leonidas like bust out of the phalanx and start killing people with a sword, and it's very cool, but it kind of like negates all of this, like, well, what's the point of using your shield brothers, and what's the point of this like teamwork talk that they're building up here?
The phalanx doesn't work if you don't stay in the phalanx.
It's not a phalanx of one, despite what the U.S. Army may tell you.
Yeah.
So should we move on to positive things, or you still got more negative?
You know, I've got some other little like nitpicky things, but whatever. It's fine. Let's get to some positive stuff. I think we got some good things to say here, because there's a lot of good in this film. Despite me being a negative Nancy here, there's a lot of good.
It was fun.
Yeah.
It was a lot of fun.
I will say that too. If for nothing else, I would recommend spending the money on this because, you know, like you said, I don't know which one of you guys said that you don't like to think too critically, especially the first viewing. I'm like that too, because a lot of times I'm just there trying to, I'm excited and I want to just go for the ride. Mm-hmm. And if you want to take a ride with a movie, like, man, get some popcorn, get a soda, and strap in for 2.5 hours of just colorful, over the top, insane action, you know, goofy humor, and just like you said, fun. It's a really fun 2.5 hours.
It is, and something to remember is that, you know, this, especially for our perspective, is these are things that we grew up reading and watching and playing the games for. And for us now to have an opportunity to sit through a major motion picture and to see these things come to life, we don't want to be too critical about it, because then you're going to ruin the experience. And I've seen a lot of people do that, and especially with some of the X-Men movies and the Wolverine, as bad as some of those movies may or may not have been, it was still fun.
Oh yeah.
If you gave it the opportunity to be fun, it's fun because you get to sit and you get to spend a couple hours and you get to step away from reality for a moment, enjoy these characters that you've grown up with or you've watched, and just chill out. And this was just a fun ride. I enjoyed it thoroughly.
Yeah, as much as I gripe, I could not make a better film than what these guys put together.
Right. I was going to say, as far as positives, look, we're going to talk about them for a while, but when I think about all that has gone into coming to this point, 10 years of Marvel Studios, almost 20 movies, and I was telling John the other day that it's almost like a soap opera. Like all the movies are connected, and it's just one long timeline. You just feel like you're seeing the next episode instead of, well, here's the sequel. So you haven't really gotten that sequelitis to happen. Maybe Thor: The Dark World or an Iron Man 2 or 3, but all of the main storyline films, it's amazing that they've not only kept the same universe and the same storylines going, but that they were able to pull off a film with this many people in it and to do it as well as they did. Now, I know that the way they did it was probably the only way they were going to be successful, which is to have this group doing this and this group doing this and this group doing this. So I enjoyed each little segment of this movie. Like, you have one group facing Thanos on Titan, almost pulling it off when Star-Lord messes it up.
Which was fitting.
And then,
Yeah.
And then the whole thing with Thor and Rocket Raccoon going to get Thor the axe.
Oh, you mean that rabbit?
That was right. That was my thing. The whole movie. That's one of my favorite things. Like, let's go, rabbit, or well done, rabbit. And I was like, every time he says it, it's funny.
And he never argued. How many times?
Yeah,
he never said Lord about being a rabbit.
He never says I'm not a rabbit. But,
I guess to keep going too with that, I'll talk about Thor here in a second because I was really happy with Thor. But when you were saying about the 10 years in the making, is for me, I've always been big into like the big blockbuster movies and stuff like that. Since I was a kid, I was into Bond and I was into Indiana Jones and Star Wars and all that stuff. And I've not seen or felt or been a part of anything just as big as this feels, and something that we all knew was coming. Like with I guess you could take the James Bond franchise. That's been going 55 years at this point, something like that. But it's not one long episodic, or it is episodic, isn't it? But it's not like one long story that we're telling.
right.
But this was from the very beginning with Iron Man in 2008. This was going to culminate with the Avengers in 2012. And then, of course, they introduced new characters that will culminate in Age of Ultron. And it kept building and building to Thanos. And you get this big, massive explosion of a movie that this was. And it felt that even if the movie wasn't good, which I think it was, it felt like it was going to be awesome in the sheer sense of the word. Like, you're going to see something big. No matter what it is, it's going to be big. Huge.
What a good word. He used explosion of a movie. What an explosion.
Well, and I'm looking forward in the first phase especially. Everything's building. Everybody's looking for the Avengers. How are they going to manage all of this in one movie? All of the Avengers all on the screen at the same time. And even at the time, we're like, that was amazing. I can't believe he juggled all that and pulled it off. And then you look at the first Avengers movie next to Infinity War, and you think, oh, how quaint that was.
It's like 4 times as big.
Yeah. Right.
And it's still pretty coherent too, which I feel like is the other thing that they do pretty well is it would be so hard to come into the universe now. Like if you had just seen, say, the Avengers and then you skip right to this, like you're not going to have a clue as to what's going on. But even if you kind of kept up with the basic beats of the story, I felt like this movie is pretty coherent with all the things and moving parts.
Yeah.
I felt like it was pretty well structured.
I mean, and it's amazing to see that, like, I would like to meet somebody who hasn't seen a single Marvel Cinematic Universe movie to watch this film, because I think you could piece it enough together.
Yeah,
I
and
really
but they'll
think
be
you
like,
could.
"Where's Batman?"
Yeah.
I actually saw somebody put on Facebook. It was somebody's mom was talking about. She asked, she asked Facebook, which was first of all a terrible idea.
Did Mark Zuckerberg answer?
No. She just said, "Hey, if I haven't seen any Avengers movies, any of the Marvel movies, and I go see this one, am I going to be lost?" And somebody just simply wrote one of my 6th grade answers, yes.
Yes.
But yeah, you would be terribly lost, especially if you have any background in the characters whatsoever.
I thought they did a great job of allowing, say, Guardians of the Galaxy to still feel like Guardians of the Galaxy.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
that was impressive.
Having everybody stay spread out and doing their own thing for most of the movie, that helped in that. But you didn't have any clashing as far as just the style of film. Bringing the Guardians of the Galaxy over to New York and having a battle in New York, that might not have worked as well as this did, in which they're trying to do their part to save the day. And even the Guardians of the Galaxy split up into 2 different ways. And so you get like miniature storylines here and there, and they all converge towards the end. And so even within this single movie, you have that type of thing happening where we get this movie for a little bit, then we get this movie for a little bit, and then towards the end, they come all together,
Mm-hmm.
And so that was a neat way to do it. And like I said, I suppose probably the only good way they could have done it.
Yeah.
As far as trying to manage all of these, not just characters, but actors and actresses.
One thing that I thought that they did really well was a lot of people went in. I think I had heard some people concerned about, is this going to be too goofy of a film? How are they going to fit the humor into it? And I know I may be misremembering, but it seemed to me like almost all of the humor, almost all the humor was in the scenes with the Guardians. There's a few with Spider-Man, which I think fits with his character.
Yeah.
But it's almost all with the Guardians of the Galaxy characters, which is perfect for the way they've kind of been telling that story. But I thought the humor was on point for the most part. There was only one joke that I felt fell flat, but other than that, all of them I thought were really good.
You might as well explain it because everyone's going to want to know which
Okay.
joke. Because I agree with you. I totally felt. I think I actually heard the sound of like a balloon fart when you let a balloon go in the audience when it happened, because I was kind of like, eh. And it wasn't egregious to where I threw up my popcorn and left. But
yeah, the only joke that I felt like was not on point, and this is me saying there was a lot of jokes that I thought were really funny, and I laughed out loud multiple times. The only joke that I thought was a bit off was they recycled the joke from Civil War about, hey, did you see that really old movie? And Tom Holland's talking about aliens, and it felt too much like a carbon copy of the previous joke, because it was. I mean, it's literally the same joke except with a different.
Well, it worked for me, but not as a joke. Like when they started talking about that, and of course, Tony Stark walks up to the guy and he's like, "Yeah, but the kid knows more movies,
right,
or whatever." Like. It made sense in that scene, but I didn't get it as a joke, or I didn't take it as a joke, because I was like, well, okay, we all know he's into pop culture, because he even says, stop making pop culture references.
One more pop culture reference. And,
right.
Now, I kind of sympathize with you, too, because I can see how you can interpret that line as not a joke, and I'm not going to open this can of worms. This will be for a different episode, but I have a particular stance on the beginning of The Last Jedi, that something happens that everybody read as a joke and were super pissed off about, and I do not interpret it as a joke. I actually thought it was perfect. So I can get what you mean by, for Jess and I, that we thought it's supposed to be a joke. For us, it was a bomb. But if you don't take it as a joke, then it's just leading to the next thing that happens, which does come right from the Alien films.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Blowing a hole in the ship and the dude getting sucked out.
Okay, so we did a Star Wars episode, but we didn't do just a full 2-hour-long discussion of The Last Jedi.
Yeah.
So maybe we need to get back together for the sequel of this crossover.
Okay.
We'd have to watch it again.
Talk about all the things right and wrong with The Last Jedi.
While I'm being a
negative
negative Nancy,
but we don't have to get off into that right now. But.
I've got one negative Nancy thing I forgot to complain about.
Oh, you forgot to be
I
negative.
forgot to be negative, guys. I'm sorry. So one more gripe, and then I'm done. I promise. I'm done
Let's
griping.
hear it. Let's rock.
Why on earth is the only freaking mechanism that opens the Star Forge in the middle of the path of the star? Like, if there's a switch for me to launch the nuclear bomb, I don't want it to be in front of the nuclear bomb. So why is it that the only way Thor can open this Stargate thing is he has to be blown away by the star? Like that was the one thing to me. I'm sitting here thinking, this is just poor engineering.
Yeah.
They did not think this thing through. But, I mean, it's a cool scene. I get it. It's a really
It's
cool
a valid
scene.
point. Yeah,
But
I
it just
didn't think
seemed
about
kind of
it,
silly.
yeah.
And now building off that, let's talk about Thor, or I'm going to talk about Thor here for a second because, one, I will unabashedly say my favorite of the Thor films was Ragnarok.
Mm-hmm.
And I like Thor. I think Chris Hemsworth plays him perfectly. I love that he's just a monster of a character, you know, like he truly is just a godlike hero, but also he's such a goof without trying to be.
Yeah.
And so all the rabbit jokes, every time it made me laugh. And you know, I read a complaint earlier where people were saying, well, you know, in Ragnarok, you know, his eye gets plucked out and his hammer gets destroyed. And in this movie, they immediately undo those by giving him a new eye and forging this new axe. And I'm not going to lie, none of that bothered me because once that axe is formed, and I thought it was cool with Groot's arm being the handle. I thought that was a neat little touch. We've alluded to this. Dude, that scene where he like bifrosts into Wakanda and just unloads, and then when he rises up, his eyes turn into
Blue.
the light and the sky goes black behind him.
Oh, yeah.
Dude, that was awesome.
Yeah, that's got to be like one of the coolest scenes in the whole film. Maybe top two.
Well, and that was probably one of the biggest audience reactions in our theater.
Oh, yeah. People went
Thor
nuts.
showed up. I enjoyed all of the humor when they were still together with the Guardians of the Galaxy, and Star-Lord is like making his voice deeper. Yeah. And they're all talking about how muscular Thor is.
He's like a pirate with an angel.
Drax's reaction to Thor was so funny. That was the best. That was up there. That's up there.
Yeah.
He's not just a dude. You're a dude.
You're a dude. He's a man. You know?
He's a man.
And it was funny to see, like, you could tell Star-Lord is completely emasculated there next to Thor.
As you would be if you were in a room with him.
Yeah.
Could you pick a better person to play Drax, though?
Oh, yeah, he's great.
John Batista. Oh, man. I couldn't imagine it. Because when you actually, if you've ever been a fan of the wrestling, that's not the character that you see there.
No, not at all. But that body is definitely him. He's just painted.
Okay,
Right.
yeah, no doubt. No, he's a beast too.
He is he's an absolute monster. I love him as Drax. Like his Drax being a complete idiot never bothers me. That is hilarious every time.
Right.
Well, and even when you have a scene in any movie or show that's like, it's funny because it's true or whatever, you know, that's almost everything he says. When he states the obvious of why it's hilarious, that makes it that much funnier.
Yeah.
Oh, and kind of going back to what you were saying about Peter Parker's pop culture references. That could be a podcast on its own. But Peter Parker's pop culture references. When it was one of the scenes closer to the end of the film when they're talking about the 80s and is Star-Lord says, is Footloose still the best movie ever? Well, it's like,
It never was.
It
Yeah,
never
that
was.
was,
No, it never
that
was.
was great.
Yeah, no,
That was good.
You're talking about that when they were on Titan, and that was, of course, we already mentioned just briefly that Star-Lord kind of messed that up, but that was one of the best scenes in the movie when Doctor Strange is teleporting Spider-Man all over the place.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And Spider-Man's just saying magic, 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 magic with a kick, magic. That was probably one of the best scenes when they're just going to town on him from all angles, and then they finally, when Mantis gets a hold of his head, I thought, okay, they've got him. And I knew good and well that that's like, well, this is not how it's going to end. And then, of course, when Star-Lord started in, I thought, yeah, he's about to mess it up.
Well, and I wrote that down for me as one of the biggest pros of the film, things that I wanted to cheer on, is I thought watching the Avengers and friends fight together was really cool. And the one that you mentioned about showing Doc Strange when he's like creating these like air steps for, guys to run up and kick Thanos in, and then teleporting Spidey around, like that was just fun action, and it was really cool to see that.
And on a purely superficial note, I love Spidey's spider appendages.
Did you?
Yeah, I thought that was
spider suit.
I thought it was really cool. I know you and I had kind of said, well, like basically they've merged the Spidey suit with Iron Man. He's like Iron Spider now, which is a thing I think in some of the books, right, guys?
It is. Mm-hmm.
And I think so is the costume that has the things.
It is. Yeah, that's the Iron Spider.
Yeah.
Iron Spider suit.
So when those popped out, I was completely on board. I was like, okay, that's pretty awesome. I'm really glad to see that happen.
Yeah. I had to say,
it was cool the way he got the suit. When they jump onto that ship and he's sitting there saying, "Okay, I can't breathe," and then Tony calls the Iron Spider suit to him, and it kind of catches him, and then he holds onto the ship.
Yeah, that was cool.
And before, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, go ahead.
I was going to say before, because Jess was going to get to something too. Before we say that, did any of you guys, or am I just the biggest sissy in the world? Those scenes when that ship is taking off and Spidey is on the outside of it, does it make any of you guys kind of like nauseous inside the theater? Because I feel as I was watching it, like I was getting really anxious, and I get really messed up when they have heights like that. There's a shot in Casino Royale where Daniel Craig is fighting with somebody on a large crane.
Yeah, I remember that.
And I can't really watch it because, even talking about it right now, I feel like I need my inhaler.
Your vertigo's kicking in.
So VR is not a big hit with you, I guess.
I have never tried it because I know what's going to happen is I'm going to do it, and everyone's going to film me, and they're going to do one where like spiders touch your hand, and you're falling out of an airplane. It's like, no, I'm good. Regular reality is enough hell for me. I don't want virtual one too.
I thought one of the coolest.
I didn't
to
feel
answer
any
the question, you're the only one that had a problem with that.
Yeah, I was going to say I didn't feel any nausea.
Okay, so I am the only one.
I
didn't feel it.
I wasn't sick.
Thanks, guys.
Yeah, anytime.
I was going to throw out one thing that I thought was to me, one of the coolest scenes in all of film history. I mean, just in terms of like epic, one of the most epic scenes I think I've ever seen in movie history was with something Thanos did. And when Thanos essentially throws a moon at Tony Stark, I thought that was one of the coolest things I've ever seen in a movie. Like, I'm just going to say here, I don't know if I can use this. Well, I won't use this language on your show, but it was very cool. It was a bad man thing to do.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and we, you saw a little glimpse of that in some of the previews. And we know Thanos can pretty much do whatever he wants to do, especially now that he has all of the stones. But I thought, just looking at the previews and seeing that, I thought, all right, Iron Man's in trouble there. But he's kind of skirted out of that one. He dodged it for the most part.
Well, he caught a big giant one to the face.
Yeah.
Well, that's what I said. Like the moon. I guess when I saw the preview, I thought, okay, he's just going to throw the whole moon, but it broke up into pieces, and so Iron Man starts to fly off and dodge a few here and there, and then he does catch one. I say catch one, gets crushed by one.
Yeah. There, and I had mentioned this earlier, and we're probably running a little long on time, so I'm sure we need to kind of look into wrapping it up. But I had mentioned earlier that there was a big crowd reaction. One was the Thor Bifrost axe, just awesomeness. And then the other one was when Thanos shanks Tony through the gut.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
And, and I kept going back and forth because I was kind of thinking they may off Tony, and I was like, well, no, they won't. He's like their, their main dude, and I was like, but they might, who knows? But when Tony takes the blade, through the gut, that whole front section of the theater that we were standing, there was several rows ahead of us. It sounded like it was just a row of dudes that were waiting for that moment, because the amount of that happened in that theater was insane, man.
Yeah.
Very rarely have I heard or been around a crowd reaction like that, and to the point where I thought that they were just screwing with us, and I was like,
that seemed legitimate.
It was a massive reaction to something that I thought it could go either way, and then I felt like they also kind of, when they showed that the blade or whatever it was, it kind of went through like the side of his abdomen.
Yeah.
So that's their way of being like, Tony can live through this.
When Doctor Strange says, from when he says it, he's kind of off screen. He's like, look, spare his life, and I'll give you this stone.
Right.
I knew right when he said that. I know a lot of people are like, what are you doing? But I could tell right away that he's already seen all the various outcomes, millions of outcomes.
He says there is one where
Stark
they win.
asked him, Stark said, well, how many do we win? And he says, one. When he was willing to say, look, spare his life, I'll give you this stone, I thought, okay, well, this has to be the only way. As dumb a move as it looks like right now, this has to be the one single way that they're going to win eventually.
See, now I feel like a dummy because I did not put that together, but it makes total sense now that you say that.
No.
Yeah, because there is that whole weird scene where like Strange is meditating and his face is going, and he even says that. Well, how many do we win? He says one, and there's that earlier line where
he says this is the only way.
And
literally.
Doctor Strange also said earlier in the film, no matter what, I'm not going to spare you guys and not protect the stone.
Right.
And then that's like the one thing he has to do. So obviously Strange not only knows what should happen, but it feels like Strange himself, as part of his character arc, is part of that one outcome where they can win.
And I have to say too, go ahead.
That's the thing that when you're watching the movie, and it seems so out of character for him to, as much as they've bickered back and forth and kind of taking stabs at each other, and it seems completely out of character out of the blue for him to say, just spare his life, I'll give you this stone. And I know everybody's like, well, what in the world are you doing? That's the only way you're going to be able to reset this stuff. But I caught that in that he's set and viewed every possible outcome. And I like what you said. I guess it was Joe that said it. Like, here we have a character arc. That's what I like to see.
Mm-hmm.
You see him. He's seen something that's caused him to go back on what his promise was and say, all right, this is just the way it has to happen, and I'm willing to do it. What did you guys think of the shot in the woods at the end where Thanos is going through people to get to the vision? And, you do get that shot from the previews where Captain America is holding the gauntlet, and it looks like, wow, how's he holding his own there or whatever. Yeah. And then Thanos just hammers him into the ground.
I don't think
that was brutal.
Well, I know that. I know that anytime you see someone seeming like they're doing well against Thanos, it literally is Thanos just playing with them. Mm-hmm. I know that's what's going on. That's what happens in the comics is he's only using as much energy as he has to make it entertaining for himself. Well, he knows he can end it in a second.
I read several people who had said that they don't know that, one of the big terms online right now is OP, overpowered. And they were talking about how overpowered Captain America is and how is he holding his own against Thanos. Fact of the matter is he wasn't. Thanos was just kind of looking at him and not moving. And then he just kind of brushes him aside.
And that kind of fits in some of the complaints that I had. Is it seemed to me like Thanos, quote unquote, struggled with the Avengers a little bit too much because, with all those stones, you think he could just like one shot everybody. Yeah. But it makes sense with you guys saying that he wants to kind of be entertained. Yeah,
that's the big thing, especially in the comics, is that Thanos has people on his side saying, look, why don't you just end this right now? Let's be done with this. And he's literally saying, I want this to be fun for me, right?
Well, in the comics, he's trying to impress the living embodiment of death, which is kind of a
the Lady Death.
There. Right. Well, Lady Death is a different thing, but
okay.
Which you don't see any of in the film. They kind of change his reasons for this film.
In the film, it's balance, and he's the only one that's got the willpower to manage all of the stones or whatever.
But that's his attitude as far as like when you see him start to punch Captain America and Captain America catches the gauntlet. It's almost like if my son were trying to punch me and I'm holding my hand on his head. Like there's at no point am I in any danger from a 3-year-old. And that's kind of the situation there with Thanos and Captain America.
You better watch your back, though, when you're done with this podcast.
When he listens back to this, when he's a grown man, I may be in trouble. But yeah, that's kind of what's going on. It's like none of the characters have any shot against him. You see, even when they're on Titan and Iron Man, Spider-Man, Strange, and Star-Lord are all going at him from all different angles. Even that, he's just allowing some things to happen. He can stop that at any time he feels like it. And especially when by the time he gets to Earth and he's got even more stones and then he's on his way to the Mind Stone, you can tell when he just kind of gets tired of someone holding him back and just shrugs them off. And then, of course, when Scarlet Witch is able to destroy the stone before he gets there, and he just kind of undoes it and wrecks them and takes the stone. And he literally can do, especially now, going into the next movie, he can literally do whatever he feels like doing.
Right.
So they're going to have to come up with some way, and this is kind of what goes down in the comics, is he either has to think too much of himself or be seriously distracted or both for them to have a shot.
And this might be a good place to kind of move towards wrapping it up. But one thing Joe and I were talking about, since we don't know what the solution is going to be, but it seems to me like it's what you're saying has to be some sort of solution, because somehow Thanos has to beat Thanos, because if you're telling me that there's some other like super artifact out there that they're going to use to defeat this guy, that just seems ridiculous. I mean, these are supposed to be like, birth of the cosmos power stones here. So I hope that that's going to be included in the solution, and it's not going to be just like, oh, hey, check out this other superpower weapon that we have.
It'll have to have that Stephen King ending where it's like the evil is its own undoing in the end. Because he pulls that a lot.
And that's pretty much what happens. And of course, I don't know if I could predict the way this is going to end, because it is different than the comics in that like I said, his motivations are completely different. In the comics, like John said, he's trying to impress Death.
He's not Space Thomas Malthus?
Because he's got a big crush on her, so he's just trying to do things that impress her. And this one, they kind of give him a halfway noble purpose in that, look, I want things to continue.
Right.
I want the universe to be the best it can be. And unfortunately for half of the people in the universe, that doesn't include them. And he's basically just saying, look, I'm the only one willing to do this.
It's ironic that his plan for the universe is so similar to my plan for public schooling.
I was going to say, there were times when I looked around and I thought, I think I'm on Thanos' side, actually.
Did anybody else, and when you saw right after he snaps his fingers, and he goes into that little space where he's standing there with the child Gamora, did anybody else think that maybe he was on the wrong half of that finger snap? I thought he had included himself in that half.
No, but that's an interesting idea, and I hope that I could see maybe that being part of the next film, is maybe he didn't take that into account.
I don't know. I think he's too smart for that. Do we want to offer up predictions for the next film?
Yeah, we can do real quick ones. Joe, you got a prediction for us?
I predict I will go to see it, and
safe bet.
I predict that when the Hulk returns, because I can't let this go, when the Incredible Hulk returns, they're going to have to do something different with him. So he's going to be a different color, and that will somehow like affect his personality. He's going to be a smarter, more controlled Hulk, or maybe more of a loose cannon Hulk, something like that. But there's going to be I feel like
Hulk.
He'll be a spectacular Hulk. Yeah, I think there'll be a pretty major character change for Bruce Banner, I think, in the next one.
Joe, fix it.
What are you thinking, Nate? What are you predicting?
Well, I started to do the safe bet and just literally say, I think everything's going to be reset, which we kind of know that's going to happen. I'm looking forward to seeing how they're going to play Captain Marvel. We already kind of get the hint that that's coming. So I'm looking forward to her movie and her role, whatever role she might have in the Avengers 4. I predict I'll make a bold prediction and say that not every character that passed away in this movie is going to be brought back to life.
Yeah.
Okay.
You want to drop any names for us?
Vision. that's
yeah, I think Vision's a goner.
Yeah, that's an easy one. But part of the, we were talking about that earlier. Part of the problem is, even in trying to predict who was going to die in this film, people were going to like Marvel's contract negotiations and saying, "Well, Cap's about finished with his contract.
Yeah.
Robert Downey Jr. has been on a movie-to-movie basis for a while now."
Mm-hmm.
And so you start looking at the real world side of things and say, well, who's re-upped and who hasn't? And that's who's going to die for good. But I'll make a prediction that what I would like to see, I would like to see in the next film some Adam Warlock and Silver Surfer action for them to finally get that extra oomph to put them over the top and the good guys can win.
I'm going to make a prediction that Scarlet Witch is going to die in the next film.
Ooh.
And I think she will be perma-killed, done and done. I don't foresee them making her a main character of her own film series. And to be honest, I just don't really care for the character that much. So I think she's going to be a to-be-killed character.
That maybe spurs on the change in the Incredible Hulk that I was talking about.
Right. And it will also be fitting with the death of Vision. I can foresee her doing something silly, too.
That makes sense. Excuse me, sorry about that. As much a fan, I'm a big Captain America fan, and I really enjoyed what they did with him in this film. But I feel like the star of the show was probably Thor. And I feel like, a lot of people have said that Thor even was overpowered in this film because he even that last blow against Thanos, he could had he aimed for Thanos' head, it would have been a different story. But he aimed for the heart, and that didn't do the job. I think that Thor will have a very major impact because, and this is going back to knowledge of the comic books, Odin and Asgard it's all gone except for him. He's the last one. And in the comics, Odin has something called the Odin Force. And when Odin dies, that goes to whoever his successor is. And at this point, that's Thor. And along with that power is certain reality bending abilities. And some of that was even stated with the Stormbreaker. Was that it's a far more powerful weapon than Mjolnir was. So I feel like that they may actually use that to their advantage.
Now, John, if you've seen the Thor movies, you know the proper way to say that word is meow meow.
Meow meow.
Meow meow.
Yeah. And, well, kind of going along with that, with Thor's ability to remember everybody's name. He introduced Groot as Tree. And again, one of my favorite lines was, "I am Steve Rogers." It was just a little too proper when he introduced himself there. I thought it was great. But
that's a fairly good prediction, though, because Thor only really gained those powers right there at the end of this movie, leading into the next.
I really feel like he had, for most of this film, though. I mean, if you think about how far he's come since the first Thor movie,
definitely.
It's terrible.
He's and it kind of goes into that a little bit, especially when he's talking to Rocket. He's lost everything, everything.
Well, and you get the sense at the end of Thor Ragnarok that you don't need a weapon. And then he gets, of course, Stormbreaker.
And he needs the weapon.
And he needs it again.
Yeah. Peter Dinklage, I thought, was amazing, too. I was surprised by...
That was funny.
It's weird seeing him taller than everyone.
Yeah.
Hey, now.
This is true. But I thought that was great. But, this to me, I kind of feel like he'll have a greater responsibility there. I think, to most likely, Tony Stark will find his way back to Earth. I don't know how yet, though.
The meta humor on Peter Dinklage as a gigantic dwarf is it was clever. Is there something that I don't know about Thanos' physiology in which slashing his heart with an axe does not kill him? Is his heart located somewhere weird?
Not typically, but the fact that he had the Infinity Gauntlet that just makes him nigh omnipotent.
Okay.
So,
and that's the thing about Thanos in the comics. Thanos is super strong, super intelligent, even without the gauntlet. He's already a fairly powerful character.
Absolutely.
Okay.
And then when he collects all the stones, well, then, like John said, I mean, it's pretty much whatever he feels like doing is going to happen. There's not a lot of stopping him at that point. He's
on par with, you've seen how powerful Odin was, and he's on par, if not stronger than Odin, especially with the gauntlet. And it's with I'm not sure which stone he had at the time, but he only had one of the stones, and he didn't even use it when he was wiping the floor with the Hulk.
Right.
Yeah.
All right, guys. Well, I think we had some fun, and we really appreciate you guys letting us on the show.
Yeah, man. Thanks a lot. It was a blast.
Thanks for letting us on your show.
Absolutely. Well, we hope you guys enjoyed this episode, and if you guys want to check out more, you can see Nate and John over at Omni Geeks, and you can catch Joe and I at cuttingclasspodcast.com.
And both podcasts would be to your credit to keep up with, because now that they're in the same universe...
That's right.
And there could be more sequels coming.
Yeah.
There's going to be plenty of Easter eggs, and we'll let the episodes trail off, and we'll have like a 90s Korn album. It'll be like 13 tracks of silence, and at the very end, an Easter egg for the next episode.
Right. You got to wait that 10 minutes for the post-credits.